Hello, everybody. Chris Fluke here. Chris Fluke Podcast, episode 52. I was very hopeful this morning. I was like, man, it's Thursday, all right? Usually I record this on Friday. I'm like, I'm getting it done a day early. This is awesome. I wake up early. I do a little bit of listening. I'm listening to Empire of the Summer Moon. It's about the American Indians, the last warrior tribe that existed here in America. Then I get my daughter's breakfast ready. She's going off to preschool. Well, I start to prepare her breakfast anyway. We put all of her lunch stuff in the bag. Daughter wakes up, feeling good, goes to the bathroom. All of a sudden, about 1 minute before we have to leave, not having going to school. Fast forward 30 minutes, finally get her going. She's at school, hopefully having a wonderful day. But during this whole time, I'm thinking to myself, I was ready, prepared for the podcast, and then life was ready to throw a curveball at me. And I think about that a lot with just the freedoms that people have and how much they are kind of gone when you have to take care of a young child. When you become a parent, a lot of these things that you think, you don't realize how good you had it in terms of getting things done on your time before. Right now, with the father of a 3-year-old, we're on her time with everything. And we just got to kind of nudge her along to get the things done that need to be get done. Marisa did a wonderful job riding the storm this morning and getting her ready to go to school. Luckily, she enjoys school and has a bunch of friends there. But man, life changes big time when you become a parent. Anyhow, 2 minutes of talking about parenthood, and I'm ready to move on. Episode 52 right here, right now. This is what we got. Just to break down, Easy Strength was a book that I've read, and I love it. I probably read it 3 times. Dan John, Pavel Satsulane. Not always easy to find the book. It's available Kindle, whatever it may be. Pick it up and read it if you're an aspiring strength coach or just trying to learn, how to optimize performance if you're an athlete. Anyhow, in episode 50, I talked about quadrant 1. This was GPP. This was a lot of qualities performed at a very low level. Think about physical education class back in the day. That's what quadrant 1 is. Now, we're moving on to quadrant 2. Dan John breaks it down into 4 quadrants. And over the course of these next couple of weeks, we're going to touch on them all. But right now, for today, we're looking at quadrant 2. And this is a fun quadrant because it's performing a lot of skills. So the same variety of skills that we needed to, have in quadrant 1, now we need to ramp these up and be able to perform all of these skills at a very high level. Whereas quadrant 1 was learning a variety of skills and performing at a lower level, now we need to be able to perform this at a high level. That's what quadrant 2 is. And the population, the groups of people that fit into this style of training in quadrant 2, they're going to be the military personnel, police, stuff like that, and also the collision sports. We're talking about football, we're talking about rugby. We're talking about 2 things here that require the individual to have a wide variety of skill. And we're going to be breaking it down in a little bit here. When we start looking at the definition of what quadrant 2 is, we're looking at everything imaginable in the sense of fat loss, mobility, strength, agility, all of this stuff, right? This all goes into quadrant 2. Cardio, the power components, the mental strategy, understanding different leverages when you're out there in competition. All of this stuff falls into quadrant 2. And when I think about what best defines quadrant 2, I think about the NFL Combine. If you haven't seen the NFL Combine, basically what it does is, what do they call it? You get a bunch of people in some tight workout gear and you get them competing. It's like a track meet, but all applied to football-specific drills. We're looking at the 225-pound bench press for reps. We're looking at the vertical jump, the broad jump, agility drills. We got a 3-cone drill. You got the 5-10-5 shuttle. We've got position-specific drills. We have the interview process. All of these things need to be fine-tuned as you're getting yourself ready for the NFL Combine. That's like your big job interview. That's what it is for football. For the military, stuff like that, there's things like the candidate fitness assessment that we're going to be breaking down a little bit later. And, when we start preparing for these things, because there's such a wide variety of things, there's a certain season for everything. There's that one verse, I think, in the Bible, it's like, there's a season for this and a season for that, a time for this and a time for that. When we start discussing training here for this quadrant here, where we got to have a wide variety of skills, we have to understand something that Dan John talked about, the heterochronicity of adaptation. Basically, hetero means different, chronos means time. So there's going to be different times, there's going to be optimal periods of time that we could kind of focus on certain things. For example, if I want to get my strength up to a very high level, that is great, and that strength will be maintained over the course of a few weeks at a pretty high level, even if I don't train at a high level. Whereas if I do some anaerobic stuff like sprinting, if I get my sprint numbers up and then I take off 2 or 3 weeks in the sprints, my anaerobic conditioning is going to be shot, right? So when we put these programs together, we could kind of strategize a little bit like that, and we could understand I could take 25 days off of really cranking up the weights on some of these lifts and really not see a big drop off in my strength. If I do the same thing for some anaerobic stuff, which is, the sprints, the change of direction things, I'm probably going to see a decrease in my performance, and I'm not going to be able to repeat that stuff over and over again. So that's understanding the timing of things, when to put it, when we can cut some corners in some areas, not really cutting corners, but when we could really, put some stuff on the back burner for a period of time and work on a different quality, and then circle back and still maintain things at a very high level, which is what quadrant 2 is. Another thing that we talk about with the timing of stuff and how to prepare properly. If I'm getting ready for the NFL Combine, I need to be able to run in a straight line, right? 40-yard dash. So if I just take my training and I start training like a track and field athlete for this, right? And I'm just training my starts, my sprints, and all this stuff here. I'm not training my, sport-specific, position-specific stuff. My agility is going to be crap. Maybe my strength is not going to be great, all because I'm not focusing on the right things at the right time. We're only looking at one component here when we're looking at straight line speed. So we don't want to train, for a quadrant 2 sport like football. We don't want to train for a quadrant 2 sport in a way that doesn't conduce us to be successful. Track and field is not quadrant 2. Track and field is a specialized thing that we're going to talk about down the road here, where it's like my main focus is to run in a straight line fast enough, right? That is not how we prepare for a quadrant 2 sport. We need to take a well-rounded approach, right? And we talked about the heterochronicity of adaptation. Track and field coach Barry Ross, guys like Charlie Francis, they always talked about when's the optimal time to do certain things. Barry Ross, for example, he did not want his track and field sprinters. I mean, he coached Allison Felix, I think, since she was a young teen. He did not want his sprinters putting in the track work and then hitting the weight room, because with every footfall, with every contact that you make in the ground on the track, it's going to be 2 to 5 times your body weight and force is what you're feeling on that limb. That's going to break down the body a little bit. It's going to affect your nervous system. It's going to affect the muscles, and it's going to fatigue your whole body. It's going to fatigue your energy system that you need to apply when you're in the weight room doing some heavy weight, low volume stuff. You don't want to be depleted in areas and then go into the weight room and then trying to train those same exact areas. You're not going to be able to optimize performance. But what you can do is you could flip it. You can hit the weight room and do some heavyweight, low volume stuff that's not going to beat you up. Heavyish weights, 90% of your max for one. Do that 4 to 6 times, something like that. Maybe do a couple doubles, 80%, 85%. Blast 2 front squats, take a break, do it again, take a break. Taking a break is important when we're trying to improve certain aspects, right? So, Barry Ross, man, he doesn't want the athlete breaking themselves down a bit on the track and then hitting the weight room because, well, for the reasons I already outlined, and then the second reason would be, those legs of theirs, their livelihood depends on them being healthy. So fatiguing certain systems and then trying to train certain systems in the weight room could open you up for some, soreness, discomfort, things like that. We do not want that. And then one more little thing here that it's going to kind of, I've been going back and forth on this idea, and then I think to myself, the more that I do this, the better I feel. The better I feel, the better I'm able to train. And in the book Easy Strength, they talk about aerobic training for everybody. Now, this kind of could be counterintuitive to a football player, but hear me out on this first. Number 1, aerobic training, right? We want to build this kind of aerobic base. Heterochronicity of adaptation. We don't want to train like a miler going into the NFL Combine. To use that example again, we got to time this stuff out a little bit. We want to build our work capacity early on, so that, like I talked about previously, build that work capacity, and we could do that with a little bit of aerobic training. Maybe some 400s, maybe some 800s, things like that. We could build that work capacity, and then we could start whittling it down as we start specializing a little bit. If we're able to do some stuff, even if it's going outside for a long walk, it seems to be able to boost our recovery a little bit. I know there's a story, I think the guy's name's Matt Wenning, power lifter, big time lifter, man. And, I think it was him, or maybe it was like an Eddie Hall, maybe it was one of these other big strongmen that were like, I'm just sick of being out of breath walking up the flight of stairs. They started mixing in some walks, some things like that. I know Matt Wenning is big on this one, for example. You lift, you walk at night. That aerobic training here, you keep your heart rate at a certain level. You want to keep it under 120 beats per minute so you're not taxing yourself too much that's going to affect your recovery. You want to promote recovery, and a great way to do that is keeping the heart rate under 120, going out for a nice stroll around the block, going out for 30, 60 minute. Maybe every so often you take that long walk. You're going to feel better. I think, it's that whole movement is medicine thing. You get some oxygen flowing. You get some blood pumping to the affected areas that you just previously trained, and it seems to just make you feel better. And, in easy strength, they talk about some of these old-time boxers where, in the 20s and the 30s, they had to work full-time jobs in addition to being a fighter. If they were to get hurt doing something, they would still have to figure out a way to train because their livelihood depended on it. What would they do? They would go out for long walks. So if their normal run was 30 minutes, they would double it. So if they had a hurt rib, they would go for a 1 hour walk at a pretty good pace. And then once they recovered and once they healed, they were able to kind of pick up right where they left off and they didn't have to recondition themselves. So going out there for those long aerobic walks can, and I believe does, has a benefit if we are a quadrant 2 individual. Basically a football rugby player, the military, the fitness assessments for candidate school, that requires you to be an aerobic athlete. What I'm talking about here, this aerobic training for all, it's going to be for those power athletes. There is a point to this. Sorry, there is a place for this, not a point. Now, when we start talking about developing programs for these two groups, I'm only going to discuss two things that I know, and that's high school football programs. And I'm slowly starting to understand here as I got somebody new coming in that's getting prepared, a high school kid getting prepared for that candidate fitness assessment. So basically with the high school football programs here, I've been doing this for a bit now. Basically what we're doing here is we're trying to teach these kids how to program a little bit. Everything that we're doing is measurable. There's going to be an assessment early on in the training. Then we're going to get these kids workout cards. Then they're going to be able to see the structure and the format of what they're going to be doing for the next 4 weeks. All right. From there, they write in their weights. They follow what the program says. There's a certain attention to detail, not only with what they're doing on the cards, but the way that they perform the lift itself. This is not like Haley's comment where you see perfect technique once every 75 years. We want these kids to be able to do high-level training and do it at that, that high school age, right? There's an incredible amount of strength in a high school football weight room. It's kind of phenomenal. And I remember this story. I was coaching at a school, and we were doing a dumbbell snatch, and our quarterback was throwing 100 pounds over his head for a couple reps. Then I saw a couple dudes I know at another gym, kind of, it was kind of like an Instagram or Facebook post kind of showing them whipping 100-pound dumbbells or 90-pound dumbbells on a dumbbell snatch. And I kind of chuckled to myself, and I was like, oh, that's cool, guys. Good job. We have a high school quarterback, not even like our big lineman, the quarterback, the scrawny kid. At the time he was a little scrawny. Strong dude, but scrawny. He's like, yeah, we got one of those guys. He's doing that too. We have, 5 to 10 guys doing what they're doing as adults. The strength that you find in a high school weight room is freaking impressive. We've had kids front squat over 330 pounds. And I mean, I'm at a small school where we don't even have a lot of Division I athletes, really. If I was at a school with Division I athletes, these numbers would be through the roof. A couple guys, 500-plus pound deadlift. 10 guys out of 40, right? Being able to hang clean 225 pounds. You go to your local CrossFit gym, there's not a lot of people that are able to do that as males. So keep that in mind. This quadrant 2 is a special group, right? A very special group. And so anyhow, when we start getting ready to put this programming together, absolute strength is kind of crucial here. We want to get their strength levels up through the roof. All right. Once we get their strength levels up, then we can get their power levels up, and then for football, we can get their anaerobic stuff, their anaerobic conditioning up. All right. That's kind of how we do this thing. The absolute strength here, which is getting our lifts up, kind of. It's not the power lifts that you see in the meets. I'm focusing on the deadlift, the front squat, the military press, and the bench press. Now, I prefer the front squat because I think it helps some of our Olympic lifts like the hang clean. The deadlift, we use the hex bars just for safety reasons. You can look this stuff up. Barry Ross, to mention him again, and this other guy, Ryan Flaherty, track and field coach, NFL combine specialist, these guys are. They They use the hex bar deadlift. They try to get their force number up. And what is your force number? It's going to be, weight lifted relative to your body weight. For example, if you weigh 500 pounds and you can do a 500-pound deadlift, that's not great. That's not a great body weight to work ratio there. But if you're a 200-pound athlete and you can do 500 pounds, your force number is going to be up. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking to drive it up. And the hex bar deadlift, it puts them in a good, powerful position. You don't have to take the bar, down below your knees. It's going to be a little bit higher. I have a hex bar that has a little bit of a higher handle. It's a little safer. And, we don't have to teach too much because you're kind of doing a squat with the weight in your hands. That's kind of it. We load up the hips and we rip it. That's what we're doing. Front squats, again, it's support the hand clean. We get this flexibility going with the upper body. We get this core stability going on here because you got the load right in the front. It kind of condenses your midsection as if somebody's going to give you a gut punch. And, it's a little bit more quad dominant than the back squat, which is okay because we are doing deadlifts and we are doing a lot of other stuff that involve our posterior. Bench press. You don't have to tell high school boys to do the bench press. They'll gladly do it and they'll gladly do it every day. I'm not going to touch on it too much other than the fact we could start practicing, trying to refine the technique a little bit. Try to get a good leg drive, try to get the glute squeezed, and try to drive some weight up with a lot of tension in the body. And then lastly, my favorite exercise, the military press. It's often neglected, and I don't know why. Back in the day, it was the lift. You had two options when you had a barbell. You either picked it up off the ground, or you picked it up and then pressed it over your head, right? Then all of a sudden, somebody invents a bench press so you can lay on and start pressing weight over your head, and then the art of the military press is gone. It is an incredible exercise. It requires you to have a full body tension from your feet, quads, glutes, trunk. Everything is locked in as you go and press a weight up over your head. It's an incredible tool for creating total body tension, which is oftentimes required, when you are competing against somebody. You need to be able to exude some sort of strength when you have total tension in your body, all right? Also, my greatest compliment, the thing that I take most pride in when I see some of my former guys that I worked with in the weight room is those dudes that could military press their body weight over their head. Those are the guys that make me proud. I coached at a school. We had some small athletes. A lot of guys were short, undersized. We ended up winning a lot of games. But pound for pound, these dudes were freaking strong. And the guys that are still training today, now they're in their 20s, and I see them lift, and they're still strong, right? And it makes me happy to see them, still doing some of the stuff that we went over, and they still understand the programming side of things, and they understand what's important because that's kind of what was pumped into their head when they were in high school for 4 years. So putting a program together, we're trying to drive their absolute strength up. That's what we have those power lifts for, all right? And the front squat's not a power lift, so to speak, but you get what I'm saying. I use two ideas for that. Jim Wendler's 5-3-1 program is a great format for boosting strength in those categories. And if you got more of a long-term approach, this 12-week Juggernaut program, which I talked about in last episode, great tool, especially for those young novice kids, because of the adjustable, the sliding max that I already discussed. Every 3 weeks, these kids are going to be getting stronger because they're new to the weight room, and you adjust their max accordingly so you can continually challenge them as they get going. I think that's a great thing. So as we start putting this program together with those power lifts we talked about, the 5-3-1 and the Juggernaut. If you're a coach, read those books and you'll understand how to format these things accordingly. Now we're moving on to the Olympic lifts. Right now, I'm going to lump in some of the jumps with this as well. So we'll do some jumps first, okay? We'll do a box jump. We'll do a broad jump, box jump, dumbbell squat jump. These are things that we do with dumbbells to get that rate of force development going fast. That's our ability to contract the muscle in a short amount of time. Once we get our strength levels up appropriately, we're going to start seeing some great improvements in our power aspect here. For the Olympic lifts right now, all I'm doing is hang cleans and dumbbell snatches. We got a unilateral power exercise with the dumbbell snatch, all right? We don't take it to the floor. This ain't CrossFit, man. We're getting freaking triple extension. We're bringing it right below, right about knee level, where we're jumping basically, hammering the heels in the ground and whipping the weight up overhead. And then the hang clean, man. This requires some practice. This requires some learning. If you're a coach, you got to get a good understanding of what this is, and it takes some time. You need to probably get in there too and practice a little bit. It requires some flexibility, which is where I like that front squat mixed in there, and just kind of helps develop that. If you do a hang clean and you get stuck at the bottom, you already know that you front squatted that weight for 5. your confidence level is going to be there to stand up with the weight. So again, the power lifts we went over. The Olympic lifts now, I'm lumping the jumps into there. We do some single leg stuff then. Everything that we said already, you could do a single leg broad jump where you stick the landing. You could do a single leg box jump. You could do a split jump. You could do some lateral stuff. We do that. We do 2-footed lateral jumps. I mean, we do a lot of stuff here just to get those feet firing pretty fast, all right? And we do that early in the workout. So basically, if I'm working it, I went over the power lifts first, but that'll probably be the second thing that we do. It'll be the explosive stuff first, power lift second. From there, some of the bar work, man, we're probably hitting pull-ups and chin-ups almost every day, all right? We might do some horizontal rowing on the bar, but for the most part, we got the Olympic lifts, the power lifts. We'll mix in some kettlebell stuff, kettlebell push press if your school has it. I think the kettlebell fits really good with the military personnel because there's strength and conditioning kind of all lumped into one with some of those kettlebell moves like the swing, the clean and press, and all that. From there, we're doing loaded carries. We're picking up weight and we're walking with it. I like the suitcase carry. I like the waiter's walk where you have the weight overhead. I also like the hex bar farmer's walk. Those will be my 3 big carries. I'm talking about sled pushes and sled drags. Sled push for speed, and then a sled march where you're just kind of walking. So let's do a march, let's do a fast push, and then let's do a sled drag where you're moving backwards with it. There's been a little bit of research that I've been coming across about having healthy knees. And a lot of it is doing heavy, I don't want to say heavy, but walking backwards with sleds. So you're doing like a leg extension. With each step that you do, you're doing a leg extension, which is a little bit more functional, so to speak, than you would get from sitting on a machine and doing leg extensions to protect that knee. So if you're coming off, if you're worried about your knees and stuff like that, walking backwards with weight seems to do wonders for that, all right? And just one quick thing on the whole functional training thing. Everything that we're doing, minus the bench press, is standing on your feet. We're not really laying down. We're not doing machines. We're not doing anything of that. So that being said, it does fit in that functional training category, but we're not, standing on Bosu balls doing dumbbell clean and presses with 12-pound weights. We're trying to crank the weights up. Our feet are on the ground, and we're trying to get explosive. We're trying to get strong, but we're not doing these crazy things that you might see on the internet with a guy on one leg standing on a Bosu ball, doing this, that, and the other thing. There might be a time and a place for that, but right now, what I'm working with here with these high school kids is we're trying to get them strong. We're trying to get them to learn good technique across the board. And then from there, we start adding some special skill on top of that, all right? So that's how I would program the high school football player. Olympic lifts, we keep the reps low. We don't follow the CrossFit model where you're doing, 20 hand cleans for time or some BS like that. Keep the reps low. Dan John talks about the rule of 10, 2 sets of 5, 3 sets of 3, 5 sets of 2, 6 sets of 1. Of our heavy work sets, try not to exceed 10 reps. That's what the rule of 10 is, all right? 5, 3, 2, another option like that. Keep the reps low, keep the technique high and good, and complete all the reps that the program asks for. Kettlebell stuff, clean and presses, the snatches, the swings, the get up, the goblet squat. Those are some of the kettlebell exercises. I already talked about the carries, suitcase, waiter's walk, hex bar farmer's walk, on the field. With the carries, sled march, sled push, sled drag, field specific drills, agility. It needs to fit into your energy system that your sport requires. If football requires you to work for 5 seconds and then rest for 30 seconds, you need to be able to have a high level output for 5 seconds in training, right? 5-second sprint, rest for 30, turn around, 5-second sprint, rest for 30, right? Again, this is when we're getting closer to the season now, where we want our conditioning to match what's going to require of us from the field. What the field is going to require of us. Moving on now. Candidate fitness assessment, okay? So, just had a message this week, and I was like, well, this is perfect timing. A kid I used to train, he must have been in like 4th or 5th grade, man, because now he's a junior in high school. It was probably a good 5 years ago. Maybe he was a small kid then. 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago, at my old gym, man, the Brick House. Shout out to Brick House Strength and everybody that ever went in there. What we had over there, this kid would come in here and get some workouts in. Now he's a junior and he's a track guy, cross-country guy, wrestler, right? So when you think about those 3 sports, you're thinking about endurance. This kid's got endurance, right? So when he's getting ready for this candidate fitness assessment, I'll give you a quick rundown on what the test requires of you. You get a basketball from your knees, you twist throw it as far as you can. I think it's an odd one, actually. A really odd test. But hey, they're doing a rotational throw. I guess that's going to assess their upper body power somewhat, and also some rotational power. They're doing cadence pull-ups where they come down and hang, come up, jaw line above the bar, come back down, right? They need to be able to do 12 to 18 of those. The shuttle run, 10 yards down, 10 yards back, 10 yards down, 10 yards back. They need to be able to cover that ground in 7.8 seconds to 8.1 seconds. The modified sit-up, my understanding, on your back, knees bent, arms across the chest, you have to come up so your arms, your elbows, your forearm area kind of touches your knees, and then you come back down. You have 2 minutes there. You have 2 minutes for basically all these tests. Modified sit-up, you have to get 81 to 95 over the course of 2 minutes. Push-ups. You are going to do 2 minutes again, 62 to 75 push-ups. And then the finale, the 1 mile run. You need to do that in 5 minutes and 20 seconds to 6 minutes and 29 seconds. So for all of these, except for that last one there, so after your basketball throw, after the cadence pull-ups, after the shuttle run, after the sit-up, you get a 3-minute break before you move on to your next station. So you're doing these in those orders that I laid out. After you do your push-ups, they give you an 8-minute break, and then you run that 1 mile. So that's your event, right? That is how you need to train. You need to keep that whole thing in mind, is that you're going to be doing a throw, a pull-up, a run, an agility drill, a sit-up, a push-up, a 1 mile run. You know, you're going to have to do all these things in the same day over the course of, if you do the math on this, over the course of about 30 minutes, right? You got to do all that work in 30 minutes. That's a lot. So, that being said, figure out where you are. This kid, for example, is about 12 weeks out. So 12 weeks out, I'm like, you know what? Before I start putting a program together, I got to know where you are. Literally just run through this stuff, see how far you can throw the basketball, see how many pull-ups you could do with good form on the cadence, see how fast you could cover ground in that shuttle run, modified sit-ups, push-ups, 1 mile run. I need to know where you're at. I need to know where your point A is, right? And then from there, I need to figure out if you have some gaps in there. If 1 area, 2 areas, 3 areas, or all the areas are areas of weakness, or do you have some strengths? And you just need to fine-tune a few small areas. Once you find those gaps, you need to shrink the gap. And that's a key point with everything, with our training in general as an individual and our training as a coach. Shrink the gaps. Everybody wants a coach to those top guys on the football team, but how about you do this? How about you take those guys on the bottom of the roster and you try to make them a little bit better? If you make them better, your competition at practice is going to be better. These guys are going to be pushing the guys ahead of them a little bit more, and then by doing so, competition is going to bring out a better individuals. Those guys at the top, they're going to be better for it because they got more people giving them a better training effect and pushing them to be better players. So with all this stuff I'm talking about, find your gaps and then shrink the gaps. With this kid here, point A, we need to assess him. We need to find out where his strengths are and where his weaknesses are, figure out where his gaps are, and then we're going to go to work. Now, the difference between this candidate fitness assessment and the football player in the collision sports are going to need a little bit of mass. They're going to need to put on a little bit of armor, to withstand the contact that their sport requires. For the candidate fitness assessment, we want to talk about kind of that force thing that I was discussing earlier with the track and field athlete on the hex bar deadlift. We want their mass to stay relatively stable, but we want them to be able to exude high levels of strength and force at that mass. So if you're a 150-pound kid, you want to be you want to be able to deadlift, 300 plus pounds, over double your body weight going into this thing, not barely being able to do, 1.1, just 1% of your, or 100% of your body weight. If you're a 150-pound dude, if all you could deadlift is 150, I think this stuff is going to break you down. That absolute strength that we talked about earlier matters with this group too. We just don't want to put the mass on. We want to treat it like that track and field athlete. Put some strength on, keep the volume low, high weights, low volume, get stronger in some areas, and then we start working on the specific events. I hope that made sense. Anyhow, figure out where the gaps are. Start trying to build absolute strength again, which is crucial in this development. And I explained to this kid too yesterday. I'm like, hey, you're going to be tired when you're doing this assessment, but if you could get your absolute strength up, that point that you could do, basically, if your absolute strength is here, and you start to get a little bit tired, it's going to nudge you down a little bit. But because you got your number up so high, you only hit 90% of what you're capable of is still going to be good enough. But if you don't drive that weight up and you just kind of focus on the endurance side of things, I think eventually you're gonna run into some trouble here as they try to break you down a little bit with things. So anyhow, get the strength level up. This kid, for example, is 12 weeks out. I'm like, hey, now's the time. Let me know where you are with this stuff and start practicing some of these techniques. If you've never thrown the basketball before, maybe you start watching some videos of guys that know what they're talking about. Try to understand how that works and start practicing out in the yard. It could be on a weekend. You get a nice day. Get out there and play around a little bit. Do some throws. All right, let's say your shuttle run's terrible. We need to work on accelerating out of a start and then decelerating too. So it's decelerating and accelerating. Running the mile on the track is not going to help you in the shuttle run. We need to kind of get a little specific for that. Push-ups, sit-ups, all this stuff. The sit-ups, local muscular endurance, all right? After you do all those sit-ups, you're going to have to do some push-ups, okay? Are we going to be able to transition from one thing to the next? So it's just practicing this stuff. When we get to 7 weeks out, that was 12 weeks out, right? So, 12 weeks out to 8 weeks out, I really want to get an idea on playing around with the techniques, seeing where you're at, and then building from there. 7 weeks out, I think it's time to do the sample test. You follow everything in that order. Basketball throw, rest for 3 minutes. Pull-ups, rest for 3. Shuttle run, rest for 3. Modified sit-up, rest for 3. Push-ups, rest for 8. Run the mile, see where you're at. All right? Maybe in that week, maybe you want to try it again one more time. All right? And then 6 weeks out, we're treating this like a training camp, like it's fight camp, getting ready for the World Heavyweight Championship. We're getting super specific with our training. We got 6 weeks to get ready to dominate this test. We're going to do total body workouts, right? So let's just say we have let's just say there's going to be 6 days of training, right? I want 3 of those days in the gym, 3 of those days, depending on what your weaknesses are, it might be 3 of those days running. If your cardio stinks, I think you run some hills, you do some track work, and then maybe you do some aerobic stuff just to get your work capacity up if your endurance sucks, all right? If endurance is a strength, I say you cut one of those days on the pavement and you start improving the strength area, all right? So my suggestion would be total body workout. A day solely dedicated to your weaknesses only, and then a day that is a circuit set up in a way that's comparable to this. You're going to perform an exercise for a minute, rest, move on to something else, something that involves, exercise, short run, exercise, run 400 meters, run around your block, come back, repeat. It's getting the body prepared to transition from one thing to the next. That is how I would do things. So you got a few weeks to play around here. Figure out point A, play around with the technique, find your weaknesses, start practicing those weaknesses. 6 weeks out, we're going all in, full out training camp. We're going to attack this thing to the best of our ability, and we're going to dominate this, okay? Now, as a coach here, we got a few things to keep in mind. In quadrant 2, like I mentioned probably 75 times this podcast, we want to get high levels of strength up. Strength is the glass, everybody. The bigger that glass, the more stuff we could fit in. Absolute strength is crucial, even for that candidate fitness assessment. Until we get to training camp mode where we got to get a little bit more specific, let's try to get our absolute strength all the way up. All right, let's get strong. Not so we get big, fat, and out of breath, but we want to drive our strength levels up relative to our body weight. I want to be able to squat, X amount or whatever, deadlift 2 times my body weight. Then I need to freaking get in there and do some heavy deadlifts. You catch my drift. So we want to get their highest levels of strength up. We want to make sure that the strength and conditioning coach, the program that they design is in line with the goals. It can't just be things that you think is going to be great for them. Doing some barbell snatches would be cool if you knew how to do it, but it might not necessarily help them doing modified sit-ups. Keep that in mind. While you're going through this stuff, you need to be able to evaluate and assess the program in real time. You need to see what's working and what's not in real time. If things aren't working, we need to find the best way possible to kind of correct and fix that. We got to keep our eyes on the prize, everybody. Keep the mission, keep the goal. Stay focused, keep working hard. Lastly, never stop. Like I said earlier, evaluate, assess, constantly seek out the best ways possible for you to accomplish these things, all right? There's always going to be something new and exciting out there. Don't fall for every trick and gadget, but constantly look, constantly search, constantly educate yourself. Try to become a better strength and conditioning coach. Find out what these people were doing back, to hear that story about the boxers from the 20s doing the road work but walking this time. Say you're training a kid, he's got a thing coming up, his ribs hurt. Hey, our conditioning, we can't afford, he can't run because every step there's pain. We could do some other stuff, right? But we can't avoid this stuff. We got to go for a walk. You got to walk an hour a few times a week, stuff like that. All right, so that being said here, quadrant 2 in review. It's a lot of qualities, and we need to perform those qualities at a high level. This is football, this is rugby, this is special forces, this is occupations, tactical operations like firefighters, police, stuff like that. We need to be able to do a ton of stuff, and we need to be able to do it at a high level because our life might depend on it in that case. Guys, any questions? Hit me up, man. I've been putting some high school football programs together. Just got a message this week about the gains that kids are getting here, to the point that we're going to have to retest and reassess because these kids are getting huge improvements. It makes me happy that kids are able to work out this year. They really weren't last year. They love it. Of course, the egos are getting built up a little bit, but at the end of the day here, these kids are learning incredible lessons. They're learning how to program, and then hopefully, like those kids that I've used to coach that are still coming back, they're going to have a lifetime of fitness under their belts. Also, candidate fitness assessment. I'm starting to work on that program right now. Be on the lookout for that. I'll probably release that. If you have a kid that is inquiring or wants to do something in that line of work, at least you got a resource to kind of check out and go from there, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We're on YouTube. We're on Stitcher. We're on Apple. We're on Google. Go to YouTube right now. Like and subscribe to the podcast, please. I'm trying to get up to 100 subscribers this year. I'm almost halfway. But we got a lot of work to do, all right? What else? Yeah, chrisflick.net's got everything there, man. The podcast will be there later today. What else are we talking about? We're talking about weekly videos, training tips, things like that. A new blog article is up. All that stuff, guys. chrisflick.net, go there. Podcast is available on YouTube, Apple, Google, all that good stuff, man. Hope you guys have a great day. Peace.